Hi, I'm Hayley Victoria and I'm a lecturer in policing and criminology in the UK. My areas of specialism are forensic science, UK policing, law and criminology. I'm making a series of these videos for TikTok and for YouTube to help my students with their studies and hope other people might find them useful too. Okay, the first area we're going to look at is forensic science, as that's the one I cover first this year, and also it's one I like the most. Throughout this course of videos, we are going to be looking at serial killers and spree killers and true crime. What I'm never going to do, however, is glamorise the murderers and the people involved in these. There are victims attached to these crimes and they are very real. And, you know, we shouldn't be glamorising criminals. Okay, we're going to be looking at them purely in a scientific and research perspective. We are going to start, however, like I said, in forensic science, which is my favourite area of study. And the most important figure, I think, in forensic science is Dr Edmond Locard. If you've heard of Dr Edmond Locard before, you must have heard of the exchange principle, which is the most important development, I think, in forensic science ever. But it wasn't just famous for his exchange principle. Dr Locard had a massive impact on things like fingerprint analysis too. It was actually Dr Edmond Locard that discovered that if there were 12 points that match in your fingerprints, this is back in 1914, 12 points that match in your fingers, then there's a positive match there to be made from that fingerprint. Okay, so anyway, Dr Edmond Locard, every contact leaves a trace. What that actually means, we're going to talk about. So let's go back to 1910. I wasn't around in 1910. I'm old, but I'm not that old. In 1910, Dr Locard was given permission to open the first ever police forensic laboratory, and that was in the upstairs attic of a police station. It's very dusty, which was great for Dr Locard because up there he noticed that the dust got everywhere, travelled everywhere. I don't know if you've ever seen when the sunlight's coming through the window. It's certainly not like that where I am right now. It's really overcast where I am. If you've ever dusted before, it just gets absolutely everywhere, doesn't it? And if you're in the house, the dust is floating about. A lot of the time, that's human skin and, you know, things that come off you. Gross, I know, but this is forensic science. It's usually pretty gross. So he noticed that the dust particles went everywhere. And that's where he came up with the exchange principle, that everywhere you go, everything you touch, you're leaving a little bit of you behind that pays what some people say a silent witness to where you've been. The actual quote from Lockhart, I'm going to read it so I get it right. It is impossible for a criminal to act, especially considering the intensity of a crime, without leaving traces of this presence. And that's true. It's still true to this day. You know, we can do a lot of investigation and find lots of little bits of people to put these puzzle pieces together. So, if I give you a little bit of an example, let's look at a modern day scenario. Let's talk about my house. You know, let's say you're going to try and burgle me. I wouldn't bother. There's not much to nick in my house. But you climb over the back fence. If you've not got gloves on, you're going to get bits of my fence in the ridges of your fingerprints. Maybe that's a bit of paint, a bit of soil, a bit of pollen, a bit of anything. It's going to get stuck in the ridges of your fingers. You're also going to be leaving behind bits of you. So bits of your skin, fibres and hairs, bits of you on my fence. If you've got, you know, clothing, fibres from your clothing is going to be on that fence. You're going to get caught in the rough surface of that wood on the fence. Once you've jumped over that fence, you can land in my garden. And I've got some trees in the back of my garden. You're going to get tree pollen all over you. And that tree pollen is going to be quite, you know, specific to where I live in the region. So we know where you've been. You've got my tree pollen on you. And you can't see that. It's everywhere. In all your clothes, it's stuck in your clothing fibres, in your hair, on your scalp, even under your fingernail tips, perhaps if you've been, you know, grabbing onto something. Then you land in my garden, your boots are going to hit my soil, and you're going to get bits of my soil stuck up your shoes, stuck in the laces, in the stitching, everywhere. You're going to get it everywhere. You're carrying that evidence with you. You try and get in my house, you can't because it's very secure, obviously. Yeah, you're taking that evidence with you. However, you then go on to burgle somebody else's house and they catch you and they find out where you've been. They've attempted my house, catch you on my security cameras, got those too. You're leaving bits of you everywhere, bits of evidence all the time. So that's what happened these days. Also, if you break a glass window, say you broke the glass window to get into my house, those tiny glass fibres are going to end up in the turn-up of your jeans, they're going to end up in your hair, they're going to end up absolutely everywhere. And glass can be quite specific. So if you've got some quite nice glass, something that's been, you know, you've got like bay windows, that can be quite specifically made, and they can track it down to where it's come from. The things we can do with forensics are massive. So it's better not to commit crime, really. Anyway, so moving on. There is a case where this principal helped Dr Locard arrest somebody for the murder of a young French woman in 1912 called Marie Latelle. Now then, Marie Latelle was quite a well-to-do woman. She was, you know, nice, apparently. I never met her. So in 1912, Marie Latelle was found at her parents' house and she'd been murdered. They originally arrested and questioned her then boyfriend, and he had a solid alibi. He'd been playing cards with his friends, and they backed him up. Yeah, he was with us, mate, telling you. All right, fair enough. Dr Lockhart was not convinced. He went back to have another look at Marie, at the body, and to find out if he could see anything else. So when he had a look at Marie, he deduced that she'd clearly been killed by strangulation. Something didn't add up for what he'd been told and what he'd found. He then went to interview the boyfriend again and took some fingernail scrapings. So fingernail scrapings are when you take clippings of your fingernails nowadays, you scrape underneath and find out what's there. So when they analysed this data, these samples, they found some pink powder, which Lockhart had used to be makeup. Now then, in 1912, makeup wasn't as readily produced as it is now, mass produced around the world. You couldn't go to Superdrug and get 3 for a tenner on Maybelline. No, you couldn't, not back in those days. So what Lockhart did was a bit more investigating. He was known as the Sherlock Holmes of France, after all, and he found that this pink powder was indeed makeup. He tracked it down to a specific chemist who said, yeah, I make that for Miss Latelle, that's what I made for her. They knew it was her makeup. It was under the then ex-boyfriend's fingernails, and they found him guilty of the murder of Marie Latelle. So this is how cross-transference of evidence works. It gets everywhere. Every contact leaves a trace. Everywhere you go, everything you touch, you're leaving a little bit of you behind and taking a bit of that with you. Hope it doesn't freak you out too much. Just think every time you're on the tube or on public transport, someone's jumper rubs up against yours, you're giving each other the fibres from your clothing and vice versa. You lose a lot of hair every day, but so that's getting everywhere. If you were in my classroom now and one of us dropped dead, any one of us could be, you know, without further analysis and stuff, each one of us is a suspect because we've all been there. Bits of evidence will be on all of us all the time. So I hope it's not freaked you out too much. Yeah, Dr Edmond Locard, born in 1877, the French Sherlock Holmes. Every contact leaves a trace. The father of forensic science. Thank you.